Paranormal or Reality presents Creepy Encounters with Strangers. Have you ever felt the eerie chill of being watched or crossed paths with someone whose presence left you unnerved? On today's episode, we will dive into spine-tingling tales of unsettling interactions, chilling stranger stories, and the unexplained. Whether it's a late-night encounter on a deserted road or a casual meeting that turns sinister, we bring you the most harrowing real-life experiences. Subscribe now for gripping tales, detailed reenactments, and creepy encounters that will haunt your mind long after you finish watching. Don't forget to hit the bell icon to never miss a chilling upload. Got your own creepy encounter? Share it in the comments below. One of my friends just reminded me of this story, so I figured I'd post it here. This happened towards the beginning of our freshman year in college. My best friend, another freshman girl my age, and I befriended this other freshman guy, and we quickly became a tight-knit group. We would hang out with each other constantly, to the point some assumed we were siblings or roommates. At the beginning of our first semester, none of us were really into the whole party scene, so we spent most of our time wandering around campus into the late hours of the night. I'm talking 4 to 5 a.m. some nights. We had lots of fun adventures and made all sorts of fun memories doing this. But we had our fair share of weird encounters, both with other people and some we cannot explain to this day. This story happened not on the weekend, but I believe on a weekday close to midterms. I remember us all studying in one of the academic buildings together late at night, and then one of us mentioned wanting to take a long walk around campus to help relieve stress. It was around 2 or 3 a.m., and we decided to hike out to one of the scenic overlooks on our campus. Our campus was pretty rural and surrounded by woods, so there was a path through the woods you could take, or you could just walk on the main road. We decided to follow the road. It was really dark, and this particular area of campus had very few streetlights. We were using our phone flashlights to see where we were going. It was probably not the best idea to be roaming around campus so late at night, but we were stupid freshmen and had done it plenty of times before. Our campus felt safer due to it being so rural. We made it to the overlook and were the only ones out there due to how late it was. No cars were parked or anything. The way it's set up is the road goes into the circle around the overlook. We were sitting on a bench with our backs to the main road, just talking about random things when all of a sudden we felt headlights at our backs. We all turned to see who it was. It wasn't entirely unusual for a car to be out there that late at night. Our campus police do regular patrols of the area, or students will go there to hook up or use drugs. The car was an older GMC Yukon-style SUV and was a dark forest green color. I vividly remember the color because you typically don't see many cars that color. We all watched as the car came in from the road, drove around the little circle, and then went back up the road. We went back to our conversation. Maybe 2 to 3 minutes later, we could see headlights behind us again. We again turned to look and realized it was the same green car as before, coming back a second time. We didn't think much of it, but I could tell my friends were slightly weirded out about it. Again, the car approached from the road behind us and went around the loop, but was driving much slower this time. They kind of stopped midway through the circle for a few seconds before slowly driving away again. It isn't that unusual for cars to go slow around the circle portion, especially if they're tourists, just someone wanting to enjoy the view of the lookout. So we again didn't think much of it and figured they came back a second time just to enjoy the sights again. Although it probably wasn't much of a sight given how dark it was, LOL. We again tried to carry on with our conversation, but I think all of us felt a little uneasy. I almost wasn't surprised when about another 2 to 3 minutes later, we saw headlights approaching from behind us again. We all turned around hoping it wouldn't be the same car, but of course it was. We were each pretty scared, but I think we were all trying to laugh it off. And we were like, haha, they must love it here. This time they once again slowed way down going around the circle and rolled their windows down to yell at us. We were sat far enough back from the circle and it was a windy night, so we couldn't really make out what it was they were yelling, but we all agreed we heard, "Gonna get you," towards the end. We also couldn't see well enough to recognize faces, but could see enough to know it was a car full of younger men. We are all pretty uneasy and confused at this point, and after they drive off, we frantically are trying to figure out how to handle the situation. We at first were trying to brush it off and calm each other down by saying, It was probably some of our mutual friends trying to scare us, but none of us recognized the car or the voices enough to say that was for sure the case. We all considered walking back since it was so late anyway, but we were all so scared we would just run into this car again on the main road. My best friend and I tried to laugh it off, agreeing there was simply no way it would drive by a fourth time and that we were probably making a big deal out of nothing. My male friend who was with us kept telling us he just didn't have a good feeling about it and said that if the car came by again, he would try to take photos of its license plate and then call the campus police. We eventually agreed with him, figuring the car likely wouldn't come by again. After 5 minutes and no sign of the car, we all relaxed and continued carrying on. But of course, we were wrong. We all sat in silence as the headlights approached for the fourth time. Neither of us really wanted to say anything or look behind us to confirm it was the same dark green car. As the car rounds the circle, our male friend stands up with his phone in hand in an attempt to take a picture of the license plate. This time, instead of completing the circle and going back up the road, the car suddenly pulls into a parking spot off to the side. My friends and I are all panicking, assuming the worst is about to happen. We are all waiting for someone to step out of the car or for the car to leave when our male friend suddenly gets up and is like, "This is fucking ridiculous. I'm gonna go talk to them." My other friend and I are begging him not to, since we do not know who these people are or what they're capable of, but he brushes us off and starts walking towards them. At this point, I think he was still assuming it was likely a friend, fellow student trying to scare us and not some randos. My friend and I are freaking out as we watch him approach this car, and whoever is driving rolls the window down and sticks their head out. It was definitely not someone we knew. It was a guy probably a few years older than us who looked rough. Absolutely not the person you would want to run into at 3 a.m. in the woods. My friend and I watch this guy and our friends start talking, and to us it looked like the guy in the car was really angry. We were debating whether or not we should go ahead and call the police. But as soon as my friend managed to dig her phone from her bag, our friend was walking back towards us and the green car was leaving. We all looked at him like, "What the hell, man?" And he explained the car was filled with creepy-looking guys a little older than us. The driver had explained they were from out of town, a city about an hour away, and had gotten bored, so they decided to drive around campus to mess with students when they came across us. One of the passengers had seen my friend get up to take what he correctly assumed was a photo of their license plate. So they then freaked out and decided to pull over and tell us they meant no harm since they didn't want to get in trouble. They apologized to my friend for scaring us and explained they would leave. My friend was so scared while talking to them that all he could really say was, maybe don't do that again because we almost called the police." We all calmed down significantly after they left and eventually felt safe enough to leave. From what I remember, I think we ended up getting lucky and were able to find another friend who also happened to be awake late that night who came to drive us back so we wouldn't have to walk. We all laugh about this situation now since ultimately nothing bad happened, but it still gives me the creeps. What would have happened if my friend hadn't tried to take a picture of their license plate? Were they planning something else that we prevented? Why was this group of random men who lived over an hour away randomly driving around a rural college campus on a random weeknight? It hit me a few days after this all happened, but I realized I had seen that car before. Earlier in the day when this all happened, I had spotted the same exact car a few times around campus. It drove past me as I was walking to my morning class, again when I was coming out of the library later in the afternoon, and again at the dining hall in the early evening. I made note of it the first time I saw it since it was such a uniquely colored car, and also happens to be one of my favorite colors. As I kept seeing it, I remember thinking, haha, I have a stalker, but did not take it seriously at the time since it is a smaller campus that has a lot of traffic that time of year. So I figured it was just a tourist and a coincidence that I kept seeing the car. But now I really wonder, were they following me the whole day? Had the car been around before this and I just never noticed it? What do you guys think? I want to first mention that this is a current situation and it could happen again in the future, so I'm not 100% at ease with it yet. Well, I'm young, I'm 19, and despite my age, people usually think I'm around 15 or 16. This inflammation can be useful. A lot of times I go to church at night, and to get there, I have to pass through a stretch where there aren't many people or traffic. It was in this place that, at least twice, a man I don't know approached me, offering me a ride on the motorcycle he always rides. I'm saying every time, always, but it's only happened twice. But having it happen once and then a second time made me more worried. It makes me feel like I'm being followed or that he knows exactly where and when I pass by, alone. The first time I saw him, I was walking down the street and he came by on his motorcycle. I thought he was asking for directions, so I tried to listen to see what it was. But as I got closer, I realized he was only looking down at me, not at my face. So I made up an excuse and kept walking. I was lucky because he didn't follow me or insist. The second time, I was heading to church, and he was already on that same street. This happened weeks, months after the first. Again, he tried to get my attention, but I was walking on the other side of the street and pretended not to notice. I was really worried and scared at that point because I saw that it was happening again. So I kept walking straight. I could already see the church, but he came by on his motorcycle, stopped right by the edge of the road, got off and came up to me, offering a ride. By chance, there weren't any cars passing by, so I crossed the road. You have to cross a road that connects cities to get to my church, and many cars pass through it. That day, there was a celebration with a lot of people, and I stayed the rest of the night talking with friends from there, out of fear that this man would enter or do something. Fortunately, I got a ride back in a car and wasn't alone. My biggest fear is that this could happen a third time, since now he knows where I'm going to. At the time this encounter occurred, I was 19 years old, and I had just closed the store I was working at with another coworker. They drove home, and since I just lived right across the street, I thought I was safe to walk home alone. After all, it's just a 2-minute walk to my apartment. The apartment I lived in had an auto shop below the building, which my uncle owned. This is important info, trust me. It was around 9:30 at night, so it was pretty dark out, and the roads were empty. Not even 10 seconds after I started to walk, across the street, a dark blue minivan pulls up beside me out of nowhere. This kind of startled me, so I looked at the driver in confusion. I was carrying some bags of stuff I bought from work, and the guy driving the van noticed and asked if I needed a ride. I kindly declined his offer and just told him I live a few minutes away, then I continued walking. But the guy started slowly following me and continued asking, "Are you sure you don't need a ride? I don't mind," he said, and again I declined and continued walking. But he was persistent. This started to creep me out, so I started walking faster and ignored him as he'd repeatedly said things like, "Come on, get in my car. Come on, get in the car. Get in the car. Come on, get in." I was afraid to run inside the apartment because I really didn't want this creep to know where I lived, so I was going to just loop back around the building to lose him. Thankfully, I noticed that the auto shop's lights were on and the garage door was open. My uncle must have been working late in the shop, so I walked towards the open garage, and the van sped off in a hurry as soon as they were about to pass by the open garage door. I told my uncle about what just happened and waited a few minutes before walking back out to get into my apartment. I locked all my doors and windows and stayed in the living room until my dad came home from our cousin's house. Thankfully, I never saw the van again. I did finally buy some pepper spray after this incident. I usually always had my weighted pocket knife on me, but I had actually left it at home that day after using it to cut thick string for some crafts I was working on. To everyone, even if you only have to walk 2 minutes to get to your destination, even if you think you're safe, please treat it like it's a 20-minute walk home at night in a really sketchy town. Always be on high guard and continue with caution when going anywhere alone. If you at all don't feel safe walking alone, and you have anyone like friends or family that you know you can trust that wouldn't mind giving you a ride or even tag along with you, don't be afraid to ask because it might just save your life.
Thanks for tuning in. Watch another video if you dare.